This is a lecture from Open Tuition. To benefit from the lecture, you should download the free lecture notes from opentuition.com.
Chapter 11 deals with marketing. And first of all, we have to discover what marketing is, because very often there's a bit of a gap between the skills and understanding of accountants and the skills and understanding of the marketing department. It's often a rather us and them sort of a setup. And the easiest way maybe to get into marketing is to look at the kind of motivations that various different organizations can have. And we have three types here. We've got something which is called a product-led approach. And in an organization which is product-led, there's a great emphasis on producing very nice, very good, very clever products. Think of the people in charge of this as maybe being engineers, and they've maybe set a company up themselves, very clever engineers, they make good products and so on, and they take a great pride in the quality and the cleverness of these products. The difficulty is that they may be taking themselves great joy and satisfaction in these products, but perhaps nobody wants to buy them. Perhaps they're not quite what the customers actually want. Or even if they are what customers want, perhaps they are over-engineered, perhaps they are too well made, they've got too many features that people aren't willing to pay for. So lovely products, but there's a bit of a gamble, maybe people won't buy them. The second motivation is what's called a sales-led approach. And here it's very much selling what you have, not necessarily selling what people want to buy. And these organizations are characterized often by a very intense kind of sales effort, the sort of people you can't get rid of. They maybe phone you up out of the blue and they will not get off the phone, even say, no, I don't want that product. They are often trained in very clever and intensive sales techniques to try to get you sign that dotted line, even if you don't want the product. And that's not great, certainly, for a lasting relationship with your customers. And finally, we have the marketing-led approach. And the marketing-led approach is a very humble approach, really. It looks out and says, well, I don't necessarily know what my customers want. Maybe I should go and ask them what they want. So it will involve, we'll see later, doing market research, showing prototype products to a customer, getting their comments, going back and changing those products so that they fit exactly what the customers want and need. What do they want? What do they appreciate? What amount of money do they think is worth spending on these sort of products? It gives you an idea of maybe how well made the products should be and what sort of features they should have. The idea is that if you make products which exactly fit what the customers want, then they will in a way sell themselves. You just fly off the shelves with no problem. And you can see how Apple is fantastically good at that. When Apple brings out a new phone, when it brought out the iPad and so on, it obviously does marketing research very well. There are queues around the block, really, for these products. And it wasn't that Apple was forcing them to do it. It was that people desperately wanted the products because they perceived the products were fantastic, either in style or in their operations or the interface or whatever they were particularly interested in. So the marketing approach is humble. It's us finding out what the customers want and then making the product or service which grabs the customer and they will buy it automatically. Now when we're looking at marketing, when we're looking maybe at the products to make and maybe what prices to charge for the product, we have to look also at not just the consumer, we have to look at a wider what's called environment here. And the macro environment, we can remember that by Pestel. So one of the first steps in marketing can be to look at the political factors. So if a government changes and perhaps the new government has got different spending priorities, then those different spending priorities may give opportunities to some companies to make products to sell to the government or to make products to sell to people who are going to be funded by the government. but other products are maybe going to fall out of disuse. Or if the government changes a law that favours some products and which maybe penalises other products and so on. We see it with cigarettes. Most governments throughout the world are putting large taxes on the sales of cigarettes, and this is going to influence obviously consumer choice and what sort of products you might go into. Economic factors. If the economy is doing well and people have lots of money to spend, are confident about their jobs, this might be the sort of time to launch a kind of upmarket product, a more expensive sort of a product. If, however, the economy is doing very bad and people are unwilling to spend a lot of money, then maybe what you have to do is to bring in kind of value range of products, cheaper products, or at least give people that choice there. Otherwise, if they can't find a good value product, they may decide not to buy at all. Social factors, essentially this is fashion, habit, fad and so on. And we all go through this. You can see it with clothing. If you look at jeans, for example, we know that the fashions change so that the width of the legs at the bottom go from very skinny, 20 years ago they were much kind of wider and so on. And the marketing people, when they're thinking of designing new products, they have to think, well, what is fashion dictating? What are people's tastes dictating and so on? Can also be kind of slightly less frivolous than that. Some of the major social factors is to do with the population dynamics. And what we're finding in a lot of Western countries is that the birth rate is fairly low. People through medicine are living longer. And a bigger and bigger proportion of the population is kind of over 50, over 60. And this will alter maybe what you need to sell. If you're marketing holidays and the more and more people are older, then there's going to be fewer trips going clubbing to Ibiza, and there'll be more gentle trips to quieter resorts and so on, without too many hills and the like, which may be more suitable to older people. Technology. We have to keep a very close eye on technology. Think what it's done to music. You can barely sell a CD. Think what it's doing to book sales and so on. Think what it's doing to how you sell, how you market, how you advertise. Think how much stuff is being sold maybe via Amazon, via other online outlets rather than being sold directly. And this is an effect on marketing, because we see within marketing comes basically advertising, and also under the umbrella is where do you go to buy the product. Ecology and the environment. More people are becoming at least concerned to some extent about how products are made, whether the firm making the product can boast that it's trying to become carbon neutral, that it is kind to the environment and so on. It's always getting back to this triple bottom line here of sustainability. And if people think that being kind to the environment is important, then if you're trying to sell products, you're maybe not going to get very far if you have the reputation of producing a lot of waste or a lot of pollution. And finally, there is legal, which overlaps with political because it's the politicians who pass the laws. But there are more and more rules and regulations, if you like, maybe about health and safety, about consumer concerns and so on. And people who are marketing and making products have to make sure that the products and services they are providing are at least legal and comply with the regulations. So Pestel is this large kind of macro environment that nearly every company or organization is sitting in. Now, if we zoom down a little bit from the world, if you like, almost the universe, we can zoom down into an industry sector. And it is an industry sector that Porter's 5 forces and the competitive environment looks at. So we'll be looking at the car industry, or the television industry, the newspaper industry, the pharmaceutical industry. And it tries to assess how easy it is for a member of one of these sectors to make a decent profit. A profit which gives enough to the shareholders, dividends and so on, but also a profit which allows reinvestment in new products so we can keep developing new products, promoting new products, selling new products. Because if you don't have money to bring on new products, then you're going to fall out of fashion and you're going to have a very kind of short life as an entity. And Porter's 5 forces looks at the following. First of all, it says, look at competitors. We can range from really a monopolistic sort of situation where you are the only supplier to one where there are many small suppliers, a perfectly competitive environment. You can probably see that if you are in a monopolistic situation, you're the only supplier, it's probably rather easier for you to make a profit. You can probably set your own selling price within reason. Whereas if you are in perfect competition, lots and lots of people all supply more or less the same sorts of goods, you've got very little freedom on your price. You've got very little freedom on what you're offering for the money. You're very hemmed in by that competition. Second, we have customers. If you are selling to a large customer, if 80% of your output goes to one customer, you more or less have to do what that customer says. If that customer says, I want a price drop of 20%, you have to nearly do it. Because you simply couldn't survive if that customer went somewhere else. So what you should be trying to do, maybe as a marketer, is to try to spread your sales around a little bit, find other customers so you don't have all your eggs in one basket. Or maybe what might be worthwhile is trying to get into a long-term contract with that customer, so you're not simply living from order to order and always frightened that next month's order may not come in. Very much the same happens on the other side. We go down to where are we here? Suppliers at the bottom here. If you are buying an important component from one supplier, remember we looked at the kind of supplier portfolio. If you're buying an important component from a monopolistic supplier, then you nearly have to pay what that person wants. What happens if that person goes into liquidation? What happens if they're taken over by another company? And what you might do as a strategy there is to take that supplier over to get assurance of supply, or you might try self-supply. You might try setting up your component manufacturer yourself, just to safeguard you from these vital supplies being cut off. Substitutes here. Substitutes often come through technology, often come and surprise people. For a long time, telephone companies, when they were using conventional landlines, and that's all there was, thought they were very, very safe. It was going to be really a lot of effort for new suppliers of telephone systems to get into the market. Sometimes they were actually enjoying a legal monopoly. And then suddenly mobile phone technology was introduced and it became much cheaper to set up new networks, and many governments said we want competition within the phone industry and so on. And suddenly these substitute products, which basically gave people the way to communicate with each other through a different mechanism. And then of course we now have things like Skype, and Skype has hit the pricing, if you like, and the popularity of expensive international calls made conventionally. And then finally in the 5 forces we have the new entrants. People sitting there seeing that you are profitable, wondering, shall I come in? Shall I come in and make myself a competitor? And these people are complete nuisances, because when somebody comes into the market they want to make a bit of a splash. They want to make a big appearance, say, here I am, buy for me. And what they tend to come in with is maybe a very good price offer for a while, introductory prices. They come in with lots and lots of advertising for a while. And we know that if we don't respond to that, we're probably going to lose market share to them. So these people are seen as a nuisance, and what we like to see are barriers to entry. So anything which inhibits new people coming in is good news for us who are already in the market. It could be our brand strength. So we have a fantastic reputation and people are simply frightened to come in because they know we're going to obliterate them. It could be that the product that we're selling has a lot of know-how, a lot of technology within it, and for somebody else to enter the market it's risky. It could be that coming into the market requires a lot of capital. And although it's not a complete impediment, people can raise capital, it just makes it a bit more risky if there are good, barriers to entry, so you're not, continually bothered by new people coming in and trying to steal market share. Now, the process of marketing, getting back to marketing, we have a product or a number of products. How do we determine what products are going to be popular, the price, and so on? And usually it will start with looking at your market and looking at what's called the segmentation of the market. How is the market broken down into different sections or segments? So typically it could be broken down by age. You can see that if you were to look, say, at clothing. You can see it sometimes if you look at holidays. There are different holidays really for younger people, middle-aged people, and older people, and so on. It can break down according to male-female. Obviously clothing is going to break down like that. But sometimes even the colour marketers would say that certain colours are more attractive to female customers, other colours tend to be more taken up by male customers. Lifestyle. We all go through different periods in our life. When we're younger and single on our own, we have certain habits, certain types of expenditure. Then maybe we get married, have children, there are different priorities. Maybe there's a bit more strain on the household budget and so on. And then later on, when the kids leave home and so on, maybe we're slightly richer again, but we want different products. Wealth. It's very common for marketing people and have ranges of products. You have a premium range, and then you have maybe a value range, a cheaper range. Because and in fashion it's called, you have the kind of couture range, and then you have what they call the diffusion range, because they realize that not everyone can spend huge amounts of money on their product, and they very often use brand names and so on to try to keep them separate. They want to keep the upmarket brand, if you like, untainted by the cheap goods they're selling. Toyota is a good example of this. Toyota sells and makes Lexus cars, which are very much high-priced, high-end executive cars, and they then sell Toyotas, which are more the ordinary kind of family car, and they've been pretty successful at marketing two products quite separately to two quite different segments of the market. And then geography. Geography can affect consumer habits, a preference for food. In large countries, it can be very different temperatures, north and south, requiring different clothes and so on there. So sometimes geography plays a part as well. Once you have done market segmentation, the next step is market targeting. And market targeting, think of targeting a gun. What you're doing is you're taking aim at a segment. You want your product to take aim at a particular segment of the market. And there are three types of market targeting. The first one is called undifferentiated market targeting, which really means it's one product for everyone. You're really saying that the market is not segmented. And it's very difficult actually to find a product where this is so. Even if you're selling something as vital and simple as water, there are different products really. You can obviously get it from a tap. You can buy carbonated water, sparkling water. You can buy still water. You can buy large bottles of water. You can buy small, more portable bottles of water, and so on. And what's happening here really is that the marketing people are saying, well, there are different segments in the market, and they want different things when they're buying water. And so most marketing was going to go down and become some sort of differentiated marketing or differentiated market targeting, where what we recognize is we have maybe three distinct segments, and what we do is produce product one, which is going to be dead suitable for segment one, product two, which is going to be really suitable for the people in segment two, and product three, which is going to be really suitable for the people in segment three. And you see this whenever you go into shops. Say you go in to buy shampoo, you find shampoo in big bottles, little bottles for the family, for maybe traveling. You find shampoo for dry hair, shampoo for dandruff problems, and so on. There, you have shampoo which claims to have only natural ingredients, and so on. And what the marketing people are realizing is that if we were to have a range of products and we get them very precisely targeted on these different segments, we are going to do better than the competition. And finally, we have what's called concentrated market targeting, where you recognize that there are maybe several segments, but you say to yourself, I am only going to address one of these segments. Maybe you're a small company and can't develop the range of products. Maybe you think that market segment 1 is very, very competitive and it's going to be hard to get in there. Maybe you think that market segment 3 is too small or too poor and you'll never make a good profit there. So you say, I am going to target this segment, not too much competition, reasonable chance of making a living out of it, and so on here. And this is sometimes called niche marketing. You've probably heard that term. Where you go for a small segment usually of the market, maybe nobody else is really bothering about it too much, and you make it your speciality, you make it your own. And this is very often how small companies survive in the face of very powerful multinational competition. They specialize and look after this small segment very well. The big boys tend to be more interested in huge mass markets, and these small segments may be far too small for them to remember it, to bother about. So if we are thinking of targeting a particular segment or particular market, how do we make sure that we are accurately aiming our marketing gun, if you like, at that segment? And this is where we come across what's called product positioning, the 7 Ps. Positioning means making the product or service accurately target or address specific segments of the market. Now originally there were just 4 Ps, and the whole thing was called the 4 Ps, or McCarthy's marketing mix. And the original 4 Ps were there when what was being sold and marketed were products, physical products. Now it's been extended a little bit by these last 3 Ps there. So this is if you are dealing with services. So this is if you're dealing with physical products, and if you're dealing with services, then it's going to be extended a little bit further. Let me just talk about the last 3 Ps, because we're going to go back and concentrate on the first 4 in a moment. So if you're delivering a service, for example, if you're an airline, you're delivering a service, there is a very high interaction really between the customers and the staff. You meet people at check-in, you meet the cabin attendants when you're on board, and so on. Now you may have had a telephone conversation, you probably have internet interactions with the company as well. But in a manufacturing company, you may never meet anyone who actually had anything to do with manufacturing the product. The product was manufactured by one company, it's now being sold maybe in a supermarket or something. There is actually minimal interaction very often with people. Very different if you're delivering a service, like an airline, a restaurant, a hotel, or a service like maybe giving people legal advice. So the people and their quality and their training become very important. There's also the process. How easy is it to negotiate the process of actually acquiring a service? Because very often acquiring a service can be a little bit more complicated than acquiring a product. There's often more choice and more queries to do with acquiring a service than maybe acquiring a product. So if you go on to the airline's website, how easy was it to negotiate it? How easy was it to see a range of dates and a range of prices and so on? How easy is it to maybe pick your seats? Or do they make it really difficult? Yes, you will have insurance. Yes, you will have car hire. Yes, you will have a checked-in bag and so on. And excessively complicated internet interactions has been found to put people off a little bit. And then there is physical evidence. If you go into a shop and buy a product, you come out with it in your hand. This, you know you've completed the transaction. Quite often, if you are buying a service, how do you know you're going to get it? So if you've booked an airline seat, how do you know it really is booked? So sometimes you need to work hard at providing the physical evidence that you're going to get it. And also you can't show people the service as well as you can show people the product. So they're not quite sure what they're buying. So quite often airlines, if you go to them, you can click on part of the website and they will show you what the cabins look like, and they will give you information about how much room there is for your knees and so on there. They give you maybe a 360 kind of degree tour of the cabin and so on. They try and show you the size of the TV screen and the seat in front of you and so on. And then if you make a booking, they will send you an email of some sort, which is your physical evidence that indeed the transaction has been completed. So those are very important when you get to services. If you're dealing with selling products, then it's the first 4 P's which are important. And here we have, first of all, the product itself. What is the nature of the product? What does it do? So think you are buying a calculator. You can buy a very simple calculator with only kind of add, subtract, multiply, divide, maybe a memory. Or you can buy a more sophisticated calculator with statistics on it and so on. You can buy a big calculator that will sit on the desk, a little calculator not much bigger than a credit card. You can buy calculators that produce little rolls of paper showing you what you've done and so on there. These are all features, different features of the calculator. And we know that people want different colors, different sizes, different capabilities of these calculators. The quality, the design and so on is going to be there as well. We see this very much with maybe mobile phones, where all mobile phones work, but of course some look cooler than the others. And we have a feeling maybe if it's made in metal rather than plastic, that the quality is going to be better, that the screen and so on is maybe bigger, we can see stuff better on it and so on. The brand is very important. People will pay a lot for the brand name and so on. Maybe if you look at the capabilities of an iPhone versus the capabilities of maybe a Samsung or Sony phone, they'll all maybe do roughly the same thing. But people seem to be willing to pay a considerable premium for Apple products that are maybe not available to other products. And a lot of that is the brand, the strength of the brand. You see it in fashion goods. I can go into a supermarket and buy a plain t-shirt in the UK, maybe for about £10 or something. If I went to an upmarket store like maybe Boss or Armani or something, I could be paying easily £60 for a plain t-shirt. And you wonder to what extent the change in price is actually reflected in a change of the quality of the garment. Or really what I'm doing is paying for the brand and maybe paying for a little logo which appears on the front of the t-shirt. And packaging. For some products, packaging is very important. I think particularly of cosmetics and perfume. If you look at the very fancy bottles in which perfume comes, I sometimes think that the price of the packaging is probably higher than the price of manufacturing the contents. But nevertheless, it's very important and will support the what people feel about that product. Price. Price looks at not only the price itself, whether they're going to be selling something, say, at $20 or $10 or $5 and so on, but also maybe the discounts you can get if you buy the product in bulk. And we've all probably seen, buy one, get one half price. That's essentially a discount, and we can find that quite attractive. And sometimes the terms, how long you have to pay. This can be used quite creatively, really. We talked earlier about how you manage demand to match supply. And we talked about, say, in our central heating maintenance, we say one of the things you might be able to do is to encourage people to have their central heating system maintained in summer, even though they're not going to use it until winter. Maybe the way you get those orders brought forward is you say, well, you don't pay us until winter. So you're using terms, the payment terms there, to actually manipulate demand for the supply of that service. There are also various forms of strategic pricing, and again we've probably seen a lot of those. Price skimming is where you start with a very high price and a lot of new technology comes in at that. When the first flat screen 3D televisions came in, I think the price in the UK was about £1,500. And what the manufacturers were saying, like Samsung, Lenovo, and or bigger LG, was saying is there are some people out there who want the 3D television. They have a lot of money, they like new goods and so on, and they will pay that. And then when we use those up, then maybe we drop the price down to 1,400. And when we've used up those people, we bring it down to 1,300, 1,200, and so on. And it gradually comes down as you satisfy the people who are willing to pay more. And now I think in the UK it's probably settled at around £400 or £500 for a fairly large television that can show 3D films. That's price skimming, temporary normally. Penetration pricing is kind of the reverse. That's where you go to the very low price. And the hope is that if you have a very low price, that's going to give you a very high demand, or very high market share really. Very high volume. And a very high market share might allow you to produce a lot of goods at a very low price because of very low cost. Because generally speaking, if you're producing high volumes of goods, then the unit cost is going to be lower than if you're producing only a small number of goods, because you get better deals from suppliers, you get more efficiency out of your factory and so on. And it might be, if you're lucky, that this very high market share, allowing you to produce at a very low cost, allows you to maintain a very low price. And in fact, this high market share can be a barrier to entry. If you have 80% of the market, then new entrants thinking of coming in will say, gosh, they've got 80% of the market. They have a lot of marketing and advertising power. They have a lot of muscle in this market and so on. They've got great efficiencies. It may be really quite difficult for me to come in and start off with a small market share, try to win that from them and actually make a profit. And finally, we have related product pricing. Best example of that we have nowadays probably is inkjet printers. In the UK, I can go and buy a colour inkjet printer, let's say for about £60. Before home. After maybe 2 months use, it's run out of ink and I go to replace the cartridges and it's about £50. It's almost as cheap to throw away the whole printer and replace it than to replenish or replace the cartridges. And so that's related product pricing. Basically what they're doing is they're almost giving away the initial product, and then when you're committed to that, they're making a lot of money on the follow-up. Here it is the consumables, but it could be maintenance, it could be training and so on there. So once you've got people kind of caught, then we can make the profits out of other parts of the business. Now, what is going to influence prices? These are the 4 C's when we're thinking about what price we're going to be able to charge. There's the cost. We want to be able to charge a selling price which is above cost of production, otherwise we're never going to make a profit, we're wasting time. Competitors, and we'll talk about consumers and controls. First of all, costs. And every company will do something like this. It will work out the cost of the product and then say, well, I would like to mark that up, make a certain profit on that, let's say a 30% markup there. So if we have an item which costs us 150 to make, we want to mark it up by 30%. That's going to be adding 45 onto it. It's going to be selling at 195, and they think this is going to be my selling price. And the 45 in here is going to be my kind of profit per unit. Everybody does it, but it's not sufficient, because you could be making a product maybe quite inefficiently, and by the time you've added on your profit and so on, no one in their right mind is going to spend $195 in this. It might be me making this pen, and I'm not a very efficient pen maker, and just because I want to make a profit by adding 30% onto my costs doesn't mean I'm going to make the profit. So what you need to do is at some point kind of stand back from that and say to yourself, well, what are similar competing products being sold at? Because if there are any, we have to kind of fall in line with that. And sometimes you stand back and say, would I pay that amount of money for this product? Does it look as though it's giving me value? Does it look attractive? And you may have to go back and rethink about it. But if you can't sell it above cost, then you are kind of wasting your time. Competitors. We've mentioned competitors a little bit. We've mentioned perfect competition and monopoly. If you are in perfect competition, then really the price is dictated by the market price. If you were to try to sell at above the market price, nobody would come to you because there are hundreds of other alternative people they could go to. There is no point in selling below market price, because part of the definition of perfect competition is you can sell all you can make at the market price. So you're hemmed in there, very little freedom. The other extreme is the monopoly. You can choose whatever price you want to sell at. The demand will go up and down normally, so if you raise your price, the demand will go down. It gives you much more freedom, however, to choose your price. It doesn't guarantee a profit, because you might be a monopoly producer of a product nobody wants, but at least it opens up your possibilities much more than in perfect competition. An oligopoly is where you have a few large suppliers, a few large competitors. Example there would be maybe the oil companies, the petrol companies, gasoline companies and so on, where maybe we have BP, Shell, maybe Texaco and so on, maybe about 4 of them. And basically what happens there, they kind of watch each other a little bit. If BP were to lower its price of diesel, say, more or less the other suppliers have to follow suit. Otherwise everyone will begin going into the BP garage instead. So everybody ends up lowering their price, and maybe the consumption doesn't go up very much. You actually end up kind of losing revenue. If BP tries putting up its price, the others can kind of stand where they are, knowing that people will now drive past the BP garage and go into Shell and Texaco instead. So the price tends to stick. People don't want to take maybe the risk of lowering a price, because maybe all that happens is everybody lowers it, everybody loses out. So everybody's kind of watching each other to see what's happening. And finally, there's something which appears almost to be a contradiction in terms. There is monopolistic competition. So how can you have competition if in the same phrase we're talking about a monopoly? And a good example here is the car industry. So we have Volkswagen, we have Nissan, we have Renault, we have Toyota, we have a lot of General Motors, Opel and so on there. They all sell what I will call an ordinary sized family car. So they're definitely in competition. However, what they try to do is to make their product in some way distinct. So it could be, certainly until recently, that Volkswagen would say, well, we make better quality, we have a great engineering pedigree and so on. And when you come to Volkswagen, that's what you're buying, and maybe they try to put a little bit of a premium price on it there. Maybe when you go to Renault or Citroën, sometimes their designs are a little bit unusual, a little bit quirky, and they're saying, yes, if you want to be different, look different in the car, slightly different technology, then you come to us and so on. So what they're trying to do is to compete on more than just price. They're trying to make a distinct brand almost, that people will see, yes, it is a car, but it is a very special sort of car, and that's what I prefer to buy. Price competition means that consumers are motivated primarily by price, and if you are in a price competition environment, will have to offer low prices to succeed. Non-price competition essentially means that you have got people paying attention to more than price. They may be looking at the brand, the style, the reputation for reliability, and so on there. You can also change some of the other variables. Maybe the way it's promoted is a bit quirky and different, and people are attracted to that. Or maybe you make the goods available in a different way. Maybe you only sell over the internet, and people prefer buying maybe over the internet than having to trek into the city to buy the goods and so on. But people are trying to get away from just competing on price. They are saying, well, we're only competing on price, there's not much room for us, but maybe we can make a distinction and break out of this price competition and put our prices up for some reason. The next C that we have to look at is consumers. What are end consumers willing to pay? And what profits also are the intermediates in the supply chain hoping to make? So we have to make sure that the consumers are happy and all the other people in the supply chain also get a slice of the action here. The first thing I want to look at here is what's called the elasticity of demand. So consumers will be looking at least in part here. Let me just get rid of this message. I don't know why it's coming up. Consumers, one of the things which is going to influence them is how much of a necessity the goods are. So we're talking here about the price elasticity of demand. Goods which have a high elasticity of demand are very price sensitive. And if you're selling goods which are luxury goods, therefore people can do without them if they have to, if you put the price up, then many people will opt not to buy them. You'd expect a high elasticity of demand. If, however, goods have a low elasticity of demand, then to all intents and purposes they are necessities, and you can put the price up, down, up, down, up, down, and more or less the demand stays about the same. So a lot of foodstuffs are a bit like this. For many people, petrol is a bit like this, because they must buy petrol to get to work or whatever it's going to be, and they've got very little choice on it. So when we're looking at what prices we can charge, and in particular what price changes we can tolerate, we do have to look at what's called the elasticity of demand. The perceived values of goods is another thing we can look at. This is always getting back to brand, where we had the supermarket t-shirt and we had the, let's say, Armani t-shirt here. They could be in a way exactly the same in terms of the quality of the cotton and so on there, but people may perceive the value of the Armani t-shirt to be greater. So we don't have to be trapped into saying, here's the cost, plus your 35% markup, here's the selling price. It could be that if you have a very strong and attractive brand, here's the cost, here's a 200% markup, here's the price. There's no necessity for selling price to follow slavishly what the cost is, if you get this perceived value, particularly coming through brands in it. In addition, it is actually possible in some situations to sell the same product at two different prices simultaneously, but these have to be essentially in two different markets, or to consumers who are in some way split here. So where it comes in maybe particularly here, if you go to America and buy electronics, more or less you pay in dollars there what in the UK you pay in pounds. So in other words, there's about a 50% uplift when those consumer products come to UK. So why don't we all go trekking off to America and bring across the products and so on? Well, there are some customs difficulties, but also the electric sockets are different. Also, perhaps you get worried, if I bought this thing in New York, I bring it home, it doesn't work, where am I going to kind of get it repaired and so on. Other organisations go to bigger lengths. It's quite a big area now in pharmaceuticals. There are many countries which can't afford very expensive pharmaceuticals, whereas there are other richer companies which can afford to pay a lot for drugs. And you get the big drug companies charging different prices in different countries for essentially the same product. So why don't we go, let's say, to the sake of argument, India, buy cheap drugs imported to the UK? Well, the problem there is, to some extent, there are regulations. The drugs are licensed differently in different countries. The manufacturer can make them look slightly different colour, different shape. They can call them a different name. They can alter the chemical compound very, very slightly. It makes no real difference, but then if a UK doctor tries to prescribe the drug which was made for the Indian market, maybe they get into kind of trouble. And people may be frightened to try, a different drug with a different name, etc., etc. And so the pharmaceutical companies have been very successful, really, at marketing essentially the same product at very radically different prices. Could almost be 100-fold difference in prices in different countries, and that is price discrimination. And the final C we can be looking at here are controls over the prices. When I was young, the government controlled many food prices, for example. It controlled the price of a loaf of bread, a litre of milk, and so on. For most products in most countries that has gone now, there's very little control. In the UK we have particularly the utilities like water, electricity, gas, telephone and so on. They have regulators, and if a company wants to put its price up, it has to be approved by the regulator, but the regulator doesn't really dictate the price. So controls aren't there so much anymore. And governments try to fight against this idea of cartels where competitors fix prices between themselves and they really don't give the consumer a fair deal at getting cheaper products. Next we have promotion. So we dealt with the product, we dealt with price, we're on to the fourth P now, which is promotion, which is, you might think, just how to advertise the product. So we can advertise a product, newspapers, magazines, television, and increasingly the internet, as being, we talked about the 6 I's in an earlier lecture, 6 I's of e-business we talked about there, how the internet is fantastic at gathering intelligence about your visitors and so on here. And advertisers love the internet, because if I advertise on TV, I've a relatively little idea to whom I'm advertising, how to reach them again, and how many people have actually watched the advert. Whereas if somebody comes to the internet and they Google a term, if let's say they were to Google something like Coca-Cola, then immediately this person is interested in Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola or shops selling Coca-Cola can begin coming up with adverts. And then they can track if you click on one of their adverts, and then maybe they can record who's been interested in that particular product and send emails or ads to you and so on. As well as advertising in the normal media and the internet, then you have got sales promotion. Sales promotion tends to happen very close to the act of purchase. You may have been to supermarkets where you have supermarket staff and you're kind of handing out little bits of cheese or something of that sort. So they're promoting French cheeses that week, and they let you try a little bit. Or a 2-for-1 offer, that's promotion. or as you go to the checkout, there's often a big display of often confectionery or maybe cigarettes and so on. That is a sales promotion very close to the act of purchase, trying to get you to buy the product. Personal selling is a salesperson, a salesman or a saleswoman. Very, very common in business to business, where one business is selling to another. That's what the sales staff do. They go out, they travel around their customers, and they try and get new orders out of them. In business to consumer, you're only going to get it if you're buying a big thing, like a car or a pension. If you're just buying a shirt, then it's going to be not economically viable for a salesperson to spend 2 hours with you, helping you to choose a shirt. And then finally we have PR, public relations. This is really getting good mentions in the press. Maybe you sponsor a local charity, a local hospital, a local amateur football team and so on. It tends not to be maybe advertising a specific product, but it makes people feel maybe warm towards the company which is doing the advertising. And the final of the 4 P's is place. Where do you go to buy the product or to acquire the service? And the 2 things to look at here is really the length of the distribution chain. The longest distribution chain, the traditional, slightly old-fashioned distribution chain, was you had the manufacturer, and the manufacturer would maybe sell to wholesalers, who would then sell to retailers, and the retailers would then sell to consumers. This is how, if you have kind of a little corner shop, little independent corner shop, this is how the butter, the milk, the cornflakes and so on gets into that corner shop. Manufacturer to wholesaler, like a cash and carry, to the corner shop and then to the consumer. The advantage of this is that it gets goods very widely distributed into the community. Every little outlet, if you like, can get goods in this way. The disadvantage is that 3 people, of course, need profit. So what you're paying for really through this long distribution chain, it gives considerable convenience to consumers because every little shop is likely to stock this here. But that convenience comes at a price because by the time the manufacturer, the wholesaler and the shopkeeper themselves have all got profit, it ends up being quite expensive. The shortest length of distribution chain is manufactured straight to consumer, and this is called direct marketing. It was very common for computers. Dell started off like that, and it worked very well for computers because the product can be perfectly specified in writing. The memory size, the speed, etc., etc. And so you would be confident buying the product from its description. The great thing about this is only the manufacturer needs to make profit, and it gets into the hands of the consumer really quite cheaply. It doesn't work so well where the written description of the product isn't enough. So if you're selling clothing, it doesn't work so well, because even though you can show people pictures of the clothing, maybe the colours aren't reproduced truly, you can't feel it, and even though you think you know your size, we know that the different clothes fit differently and so on there. And if it's tried for something like clothing, roughly 50% of sales are returned as being unsuitable, and that adds greatly to the expense. Although you're saving money by not having the middleman, you actually spend quite a lot of money in processing the returns which have been coming back, and inspecting them, maybe repackaging them so they can be sold again. And finally in place there is suitability of the outlet. If you're selling very specialist upmarket goods, let's say very specialist high quality musical instruments, then you would expect to go to a specialist shop which can show you a range of these instruments, and particularly maybe where the staff know about them, can explain to them. If you're buying more ordinary goods, then you're quite happy to go to a more generalist shop, maybe even a supermarket, and so on. If you're selling expensive clothing, you would expect to go to a kind of upmarket clothing shop, a boutique of some sort. If you're wanting more everyday clothing, you're quite happy going to the local department store. So you have to make sure that the outlet, if you like, the feeling in the outlet and so on, matches and can support the goods which are being sold. Just a little bit here on how marketing by the public sector and indeed for not-for-profit organisations maybe changes a little bit, is maybe a little bit different to marketing in really products really, and the profit-seeking organisations here. They will still make use of the 4 Ps. They're still selling something. They still have to often think about a price, maybe which they're selling it. They have to think how we're going to get in touch with the people who may want to consume this product and service and so on. They have to decide how you're going to get the product and service and the like. So the 7 Ps are still very relevant there, but they might have to be adjusted a little bit. So if you think about a charity here, charity is really marketing to 2 sets of people. It has to raise the money, so it's marketing to, it's selling something in a way to the people who are going to be contributing to it. It's selling them maybe a feeling of satisfaction that they've done good, but it's also needs to attract people who are going to benefit from that charity, who need to know where to go to get the money and so on. So there may be 2 sorts of products, or 2 sides of the products and so on, which we need to think about designing. The price, frequently we're not aiming to make a profit. Frequently, say in a charity, the product is given away free of charge. In other situations, it may be supplied at cost. Similarly, in a lot of the health service in the UK, certainly, there is no charge for the service being given to people and the like. So quite often the price can become almost irrelevant when we're thinking about the supply. But not always. Sometimes it's just reduced prices. The place. Again, if we're thinking of the charity here, where are we going to get donations from? And one way is that a lot of charities have charity shops. People bring, let's say, old books or CDs and so on to that, and they leave them there, and then those can then be sold. Sometimes what you're going to be doing is you will be then expecting people who need help to go to the office or go to the outlet and seek help. Sometimes you'll be sending out your workforce, if you like, maybe to visit people at home or in hospitals and so on. So the place is maybe just a little bit more varied depending the sort of charity which is being talked about, and also whether you're talking about the donors or the recipients. Promotion, well, a full range of promotional methods is available. You've seen charities advertising on television, you've seen posters by the roadside and so on, you've seen it on the internet, I've no doubt, and so on as well. So it's nearly always there. People, if you're in a not-for-profit organisation, if you're in charities, very often what you're doing is actually supplying a service, not a product here. And it's important that the people involved maybe are persuasive, so that if they stop you in the street, you feel maybe inclined to give them a donation. Could be important. If they are supplying charity to you, help to you, you have to make sure you don't feel patronised and so on. So a very great care is needed, I think, in the people who are involved in both sides of these organisations. And then there is the process. Make it easy to donate. Internet, print forms out, etc., etc. Maybe allow people to set up standing orders through their bank and so on and so forth. Don't make it too difficult for people to claim help. Lots and lots of forms being needed is not going to attract people that you're actually wanting to help. Remember, as a charity, you want to help people. You don't want to just get money in and not help any of the potential beneficiaries. So both sides of it need to be made relatively easy. And physical evidence. Physical evidence is certainly if you give money to a charity, maybe you get a nice letter of thanks, maybe you get an email, and if you give money in the street, normally you get a little kind of sticker of some sort, which proclaims to people that you have given money to this charity and so on, and it's physical evidence of your good character almost, that you've been willing to do this. Consumer theory. Why do people buy is really what we're saying here. How do people look at the buying and selling transaction, I suppose you might call it? And there are two main theories, and we're going to cover them very briefly. You can read about them. First of all, there is what is called social exchange theory. And basically this takes the view that we're all a bit selfish, that when we enter into any sort of purchasing transaction, we're trying to get the best deal possible. We look at a relationship in a profit-loss sort of a way. So a person you'll be making your assessment of whether or not you want to pay money for something. You will be comparing the cost to the reward. So if you're saying, am I going to go to the cinema? Am I going to go to the theatre and so on there? You think, well, it's going to cost me £8 maybe to go to the cinema, depending where you go and what sort of seat you get and so on. And you think, do I want to spend £8 to see this film and so on? And you're going to go through this little kind of a calculation. If you say, well, maybe I'll go to the opera, maybe an opera seat can cost over £100, and again you'd be thinking, am I going to get value for money? Is it worth spending £100 to go and watch this opera, given the people singing, the orchestra playing, and so on? Sometimes past experience will tell you that it is good value for money. Sometimes you won't have the luxury of that. As well as that, you will be comparing different products. So you're thinking, what am I going to do tonight? I could spend £8 on the cinema, or I could spend £100 and go to the opera. And you're saying, not so much as the opera worth £100, but not so much as the cinema worth £8. But you're saying, which would I rather do there? So you're in a way comparing similar items insofar as they both provide entertainment for an evening for you to make the choice, and be weighing up both the costs and the perceived enjoyments and memories you're going to get from making those choices. Equity theory is a little different. Equity theory says that individuals are motivated in a transaction to achieve fairness. And they're not trying to get the best value for money and so on. They are motivated to get into a relationship that they're going to feel pretty comfortable with, that they're neither being exploited nor exploiting the other side of the transaction there. That's basically what equity theory is. If you see that something is exploitative, then this is going to lead to unhappiness, dissatisfaction. You suddenly feel uncomfortable with that. If you feel you're being exploited, you're going to leave. If you feel that you are maybe exploiting somebody else, maybe your conscience gets to you and you don't want to continue that transaction into the future. If you do recognize this inequity, there are of course mechanisms that might be around to save the day, so to speak. You can make adjustments. You can maybe alter what you pay, alter what you ask for and so on. Have a chat with these people and say, well, I'm paying this money, I'm actually not quite getting, I think, good value for money there with this sort of deal. And you say, if you want this relationship to continue, then you will have to increase the benefit I'm going to be getting from it.